What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast presented by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network, coming at you live on X and the YouTube channel. I am Bo. That is Brant. Brant, we're going to start the show off the only way I know how this week. Go ahead. Let it out, sir. Let it out.
The Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl, baby!
That's the same reaction Brant gets when his wife asks him to jump in the car and head to the buffet. So very excited fat guy on that side of the screen this week. So congrats to your Seahawks. I know it's not exactly where you expected them to be at the beginning of the season, but definitely got to be an elated feeling for you heading into the Pro Bowl and then the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, you and me talked. I had him pinned at 8 or 9 wins this year. I didn't think we would come out of the division. I didn't think we'd make the playoffs. I thought this was going to be the first true year of McDonald, and the defense turned it up, and Sam played at a pretty high level when he needed to. He's played pretty good over the last few weeks, just taking the check downs, taking the easy routes. The offensive line has stepped up, and the team has been extremely fun to watch because even in the LOB era, it was a lot of defense, and the offense was kind of wishy-washy. Every once in a while, we'd have breakout games, but this offense has actually been kind of fun to watch to go along with this defense. They're flying at you. It's been a lot of fun this year, and like you said, I didn't think we'd be here. I didn't even think we'd be in the playoffs, and now we're off to San Francisco. Me and Pops looked at tickets and realize it's not in the budget. So if anybody wants to donate to Fatboy Brant and Pops going to the Super Bowl, it's going to be quite expensive, but let me know. I can start a GoFundMe page if you want me to go.
Thank God there's no check fat fees on airlines. That'd be even more expensive. So, I think it's awesome. Honestly, it's super interesting that Sam Darnold is the first quarterback out of that 2018 draft class that featured Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. First one to make a Super Bowl appearance. Another one that I saw that was absolutely hilarious was a Patriots fan tweeted, if Sam Darnold cost the Patriots a Super Bowl, he was worth the 3rd overall pick for the Jets. So definitely some very funny, jokes going around at Sam Darnold's expense, but mainly because Sam Darnold's played well to this point, obviously. You and I talked about your Seahawks prior to the playoffs, and I said that your team would go as far as Sam Darnold took them, and he's played mistake-free football in the playoffs. And here we are talking about your Seahawks moving into the Super Bowl. We'll talk about them a little bit later on in the episode, as well as next week at nauseum. But we're going to talk this week about our way too early top 10 running backs for next season, Brant. We're kind of going to get into that a little bit, kind of see where some things fall, and then maybe talk about where the love is, Brant. See if we can't find a way for Jeremiah Love to potentially get in to our top 10s heading into next year. We don't even know where he's going, right? Well, maybe we'll talk about some spots where we want him to go so that he can find his way into our top 10. So are we starting at the top? We starting at the bottom. And again, for those of you watching at home, these are not consensus. Brant and I did not put our heads together this week. We did discuss them. There are some big differences here, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes moving forward. But you tell me where you want to start, and we'll start there.
I say we start at the number one spot. We were both consensus on who we think's number one next year, and that's with number one, I think, is Bijan Robinson from your Atlanta Falcons. Algiers a free agent. I do think they'll bring somebody else in, but I don't know if he'll see as much work. And they may re-sign Algier, but with Stefanski there, run first offense coming in, and Bijan gets all those receptions. I think the sky's the limits. I think he has another amazing year next year.
Yeah, obviously, as a Falcons fan, Bijan's kind of the excitement for us. Stefanski came in his press conference yesterday, said one of the first people he reached out to was Bijan. Says he's super excited to get him in the building. Listen, Kevin Stefanski built his back, I guess, on the running game in Cleveland. So I don't expect that to take any kind of a backseat at all this year. I think it'll be even better for Bijan. I think the next level is just RB1 after RB1 for Bijan. I think he's capable, and that's why you and I both have him there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You go ahead with your number two. I know we were not on the same page with this, but we can discuss this one a little bit.
Yeah, so I honestly was a little bit shocked at number two when we got to that one. Actually, I wasn't shocked at number two because we went backwards and we talked about him. But the fact that your number 2 is not the same as mine, I'm a little bit shocked. I thought I went kind of consensus with this. I have Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions at number 2. They do have a new offensive coordinator in Drew Petzing coming to town. I assume this is going to be more of the Jahmyr Gibbs show next year. I know there was kind of disappearing acts last year a little bit, but man, when Jahmyr Gibbs is on the field and he's involved, he's as close to Bijan as you can possibly get value-wise. I think the sky's the limit for Jahmyr Gibbs next year. If at the end of the season he told me he's RB1, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, and I do not have him at number 2 because I don't think he is a full-blown workhorse. You still see Monty getting some touches back there and everything else. So I put who I think are the workhorses up top above him. I do have him a few more spots down, and I'll talk about that a little bit later when I do get to my number where I have Gibbs at. My number 2, I have CMC. Kittle's probably going to miss the beginning of the year. Ayuk's probably not going to be there from everything that's coming out. And let's be honest, Pearsall's probably not going to play over half the year. So the whole offense is CMC, and it's until he runs out of gas, I have to keep him up there. He's going to have a heavy workload again in both the rushing and receiving game. He might be the only receiver on the team to start the year because Jennings is a free agent as well, so they may not go back out and re-sign him. So I just think that workload is just going to be too much to keep him outside of the top 2.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Number 3, we're consensus again, Brant. We both have Jonathan Taylor there. If you want to talk about why you got JT at 3.
I got JT there because he is the horse there. He's going to see it all. Daniel Jones says he'll be ready for the start of the season, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% convinced that he will be with the Achilles injury he did have. And even if he is, I don't know if he'll be 100% ready to play. So it's going to be completely, once again, Jonathan Taylor show with whatever quarterback they roll out there. It could be Russell Wilson, could be Phillip Rivers again, could be Jameis Winston. Let's hope so. Then we get some comedy in Indianapolis if we get Winston.
Aaron Rodgers, maybe.
Aaron Rodgers, maybe. But yeah, no, I think JT is just too much of a workhorse to keep him out of that top 3. And he's involved in everything again, running the ball 15, 20 times a game and then getting 5, 10 catches a game or targets a game.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor, obviously, kind of honestly, after he torched my Falcons in Berlin, Germany, I think he kind of had that little bit of a slowdown. I think if that game not necessarily becomes the trend, but if he has, a couple more touchdowns, a couple more 100-yard performances down the stretch, we could be talking about him as number 1 for next year. But he did have that letdown after the Daniel Jones injury that happened at quarterback. The quarterback play was abysmal. And so I think that slowed JT down. I think that's the only reason we don't have JT higher. But yeah, three consensus for JT feels really good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll go ahead and hit my number 4 real fast. I got Ashton Genty at number 4. He saw over 300 touches this year with an abysmal offensive line. He was getting hit in the backfield and still finished up there in the top 10 running backs. They're going to get a new coach in. I think they're going to spend some money on that offensive line. They'll get a new quarterback. I don't see Geno being their quarterback next year. Greatest trade in a while for Seattle ever since the Russell Wilson trade. Apparently, we like to just trade quarterbacks right as they hit the brick wall, which is fine. But yeah, I just think Genty, once again, he'll be heavily involved. They drafted him high, and I think he'll be what the focal point of that offense is going to be again.
Yeah, my thing with this is, thank God it's the way too early rankings, because if the Raiders do address that quarterback situation, we do find out who their head coach is. We do get to see them improve their offensive line. Obviously, I moved Genty up my board a little bit. I will talk about him a little bit later on. I don't have him at 4. I do have Christian McCaffrey at 4. Listen, Christian McCaffrey fatigue feels real. For the last couple seasons, everybody's kind of been doubting it a little bit. Like one of these years, it's going to slow down a little bit. And it really wasn't this year. There was even a little fear mongering at the beginning of the season when the Niners went out and acquired Brian Robinson. There was some thoughts like, well, maybe they're going to scale back the usage for CMC, and it just doesn't happen. I just think the big difference between him and the 3 players that were mentioned before them is he's slowing down a little bit, where those other 3 are going to be on their peak, their prime, the middle of it. And CMC, I feel like that Niners offense could have a huge letdown next year, which is how many people they have to pay on both sides of the ball and who's going to be where. So I am a little nervous about the Niners and CMC just because of how many people are or do have to be paid. We did see Robert Salah leave again this year. There's going to be some jockeying on the defensive side of the ball. How many coaching staff members does Salah take with him to Tennessee, from whether it be quarterback coaches, running back coaches? We don't know. So I think there's a lot of unforeseen pieces moving in the background for me. And for that reason, I've got CMC just a little bit lower than the other three.
Okay. So at number 5, this is where I have Gibbs. I have Gibbs here. He's the highest committee, but he's also the lowest committee back that I have that shares it. Monty's still there. I still think that he's going to see a heavy amount of work. And I think that they end up taking the Rams approach, where maybe it's a little less Gibbs and a little more Monty, and scaling back. That way he's healthier down the stretch in the fourth quarter, everything else. So I could see his workload coming down just a little bit more this year. But yeah, I still think he's on that border of full-blown workhorse, but not quite a committee back there. And he is good. He has those breakaway games, those breakaway runs, breakaway catches. And he easily could move up and easily could move up in my rankings. I don't see him moving down anywhere unless somehow they go out and, draft a first-round running back, which I think would be stupid on their end. But that's about the only way that I could see him moving down in my rankings.
Okay. All right. At 5, I do have Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals, coming off of 2 years in a row where he's been a top 12 running back. This year, career finish at 7. There's so many pieces that are needed on that team from top to bottom. I don't see them spending any kind of capital or dollar amount on addressing the running back position. I think this will be Chase Brown with, 35-year-old Samaje Perine again, potentially coming after it again next year. Too much passing game work for Chase Brown, too much run game volume for Chase Brown. That offense should rebound next year, should be more touchdown equity for Chase Brown. I'm all in on Chase Brown for next year.
Okay, I'm gonna hit my number 6 real fast, and then I'll roll into my 7 right after, because that's where I have Chase Brown is at 7. My number 6, I have.
That was Chase Brown was my number 5. I haven't hit my number 6.
Oh, you haven't hit it. Go ahead and hit your 6.
Yeah. Don't skip me. I do have James Cook at 6. This one would have been one where I think I could have moved him down a little bit had Joe Brady not been named head coach. It stays with the same coaching staff that scouted him, the same coaching staff that knows him, the same coaching staff that has schemed for him. We've seen him be Josh Allen's best weapon several times over this year. And hell, he's one of the only players the owner didn't chastise on his press conference like he did Keon Coleman. So, I think we've seen James Cook, really establish himself in that backfield the last 2 years. I think you get another year out of that with James Cook this year. Plenty of touchdown upside, plenty of pass catching work for James Cook. Goes into 2026 and finishes the top 10 back again pretty easy.
Okay. I have Cook a little bit later in my rankings. At my number 6, I have A-Chain. Not sure. This guy was all over my rankings. I had him all the way up at 5 at one point. I had him down at 7 at one point. I had him all over my rankings when I did this. I don't really know what it's going to look like in Miami. There could be a whole change of everything. As they get rid of their coach, the whole offense could get revamped. You could see a new quarterback. You could see a whole new running back start. But A-Chain has that explosive ability. I think that even if he is not a workhorse back, even if he's in a 50-50 backfield, this is a guy that could turn a 5-yard catch into a 98-yard touchdown. This is a guy that can turn any run into, a 40, 50-yard touchdown rush. And this guy, I don't think needs a whole lot of work as long as he stays healthy to be in the top 10. So I have him at 6. This is kind of where I was comfortable with, and I have a good feeling that he's probably going to slide down my rankings as we get closer to the season and new head coaches being added. Okay. So then at my number 7, I had Chase Brown, as you alluded to earlier. He gets Joe Burrow back to full strength. We saw how good he was whenever Burrow was back to full strength this year. He workhorse finished, what did you say, number 7 he finished this year. And he'll get a whole season of that. I think they'll add a little bit more to that offensive line to keep them protected. There's just a lot of weapons to throw to, and Burrow is so good at throwing the ball that I can't really move him anywhere else the way they spread the ball out so much between all the targets and everything else. I do think he will be a workhorse back, but a workhorse in Cincinnati isn't really a workhorse in some other places as much as they air that ball out.
That's very fair. Yeah, very fair. Another team that needs to potentially invest in their offensive line a little bit as well. So at my number 7, I have the team that the running back from the team that your team just sent home last week. I've got Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. I do think Matt Stafford comes back one more year. I think they do try to run it back. They just got to an NFC Championship game. I think this team goes all in again and tries to get there one more time next year. If they don't get to the Super Bowl next year, Stafford's probably done, in my opinion, although he did have an MVP season this year. So it's clear Father Time hasn't caught him yet. But I just – Kyren Williams, Brant, he's been that guy that you and I have doubted and kind of gotten down on the last couple of years. And every year he proves us wrong. Every single time we get down on him, he ends up having another good season. Kind of reminiscent of a quarterback you and I got down on several times, and then all of a sudden he was an MVP and started throwing the ball in Lamar Jackson. Now, granted, Kyren Williams isn't a quarterback. He's not going to start throwing the ball all the time, I don't think. But I just think he's been in the top 10 too many times. It's not – I can't leave him out. I think we saw how much that offense or how much he means to that offense and how they like to get him going. Even with Blake Corum in the backfield, I still think you're talking about Kyren Williams as a top 10 running back next year.
Now I'm gonna hit on this because I do not have Kyren in my ranking in my top 10 at all. I think that Corum gets a lot more work. He showed that against some of the tougher defenses in the end, just like playing us. He had a great game last Sunday against us. Corum was the more explosive back. He was getting the longer runs. He finally broke the streak of so many games of us not giving up a 12-yard rush, and he ended up ripping off a 19-yard rush on us. I think Corum takes a lot more work next year, and that's kind of why I left Williams out. I want to see what this offseason looks like for the Rams. But I still think that Corum, I think this gets closer to 50-50 than it was this year, all season, along with Blake Corum.
Okay. All right. Number 8, I have Devon Achane, a guy you talked about already. I couldn't leave him off of my top 10, but I really wasn't sure where to place him, how much of his success was based on Mike McDaniel and that high-speed offense. It's going to be a new quarterback under center next year, a different offensive philosophy in town next year. Honestly, I'm not sure how much I trust Devon Achane at all, but for right now, I had to put him in my top 10. There is a world, in my opinion, Brant, where Devon Achane is no longer a top 10 running back. Depending on how things go for Jeff Hafley in his time there, they come out. The general manager, John Eric Sullivan, come out and said, "We're going to build this team up through the trenches. You got to be able to be good in the trenches to win in a cold weather division like this." Jeff Hafley's come out and said, "We're going to be a nitty gritty offensive, win through the trenches. The defensive line's going to beef up. The offensive line's going to beef up." That sounds really good, but does that mean they want a beefier running back, like somebody like a Josh Jacobs, where Jeff Hafley just came from? So for me, there's a lot of interesting pieces there. Now, if it becomes Achane and if Achane has, a lion's share of the carries back there, then the sky's the limit. But this coaching staff didn't draft him. There's a decent running back room there. There's Ollie Gordon in town. There's Jalen Wright from a year ago as well. So there's 3 running backs in there that I believe are all still on a rookie contract. So it's going to be really interesting to see what this coaching staff wants to do with it. Do they want their own guy? Do they want to go to a more bruiser type back like, an Ollie Gordon? It's going to be really interesting for all those things. I couldn't get him any higher, but I also couldn't justify leaving him out until we get a clear picture of what this Miami Dolphins team looks like.
Yeah, you hit on it. All 3 running backs were drafted in the last 4 years there. Achane could be the first one out the door as well, so they may not want to re-sign him. So they may want to see what else they have and not really rely on him too much. My number 8 was a guy that struggled a little bit this year at times, but then showed out in the fantasy playoffs, and that's Derrick Henry. He's still in a great spot there in Baltimore. I know they got rid of Harbaugh, but I think he's still in a great spot. I think he's still going to be a red zone monster. I think he's going to, be in the top 3-4 people for touchdowns next year. And it's hard to leave Derrick Henry out of there, as he is just a red zone monster. So that's why I have him at number 8.
Yeah, I did not have Derrick Henry in there. 8 games this year with less than 55% of the snaps, 6 games under 50% of the snap. We did see them try to get Keaton Mitchell involved. We saw them try to get Rashawn Ali involved. And there was plenty of games where you're watching the game and you're like, where's Derrick Henry at? Where's Derrick Henry at? They get down around the red zone. It's not a priority to get him in anymore. 32 years of age, brand new coaching staff coming in next year, and Jesse Minter. I think there is a lot of really good pieces still on Baltimore's defense. So I don't think you'll have to spend a lot of time. But again, what's the philosophy look like next year? What's the change? Is Derrick Henry become a touchdown vulture? If so, I want him in my top 10. If he's going to be on the field less because they want explosive playability running backs, like clearly the plan was to get Keaton Mitchell more involved last year. Again, who knows? Maybe this ends up being a team that wants to go out and get Jeremiah Love because their defense is so darn good. I don't know. But because of that, because of the age, because we saw the slowdown happen at the beginning of the season a little bit, Derrick Henry just didn't make my top 10. And I don't feel that bad about it, right? I feel like at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of people, myself included, kicking ourselves for still having Derrick Henry in our lineups every week. But if you own him, you couldn't sit him. And it paid off sometimes it didn't. It was kind of a frustrating year to own Derrick Henry this year. You're right. Down the stretch, it was great. But to get to the stretch, there was some time where it wasn't that great. Right. I couldn't trade Derrick Henry this year in a league where I went from trying to contend to trying to blow it up just because I couldn't get trades either way. I was stuck in the middle of the pack. I couldn't move Derrick Henry. Nobody was interested in him. I thought, hey, I got to get either an early second or at least a first or something for him. Nobody was interested. I couldn't get a sniff. So I think at this point, Derrick Henry's going to retire on my roster. Hopefully he gets one more year top 10. I just don't see it right now.
Okay. All right. Who you got at number 9?
I have Ashton Jeanty at my 9 spot again. Everything points to the Raiders being a better football team than they were last year. Should have Fernando Mendoza under center unless they do something absolutely ignorant there in Vegas. Should spend some money on their offensive line, get that a little bit better. But my goodness, you need weapons on the outside. You need offensive line. You need pieces everywhere on defense. There's just so many holes in that team to fill. Who knows where it is. If Jeanty gets an offensive line, I do think top 5 is a possibility for him. But for me right now, I'm going to rank him 3 spots higher than where he finished or 2 spots higher than where he finished. I'm going to put him at 9. I still think he's a top 10 back. The volume is what keeps him there. I just think he needs – and again, he didn't start catching passes until the second half of the season. Maybe had he done that all season, I'd be a little less jaded on him. But, that Geno Smith, Pete Carroll experience was great in Seattle. It was not good in Vegas.
No, not at all. I have James Cook at my number 9. I think they're going to add some weapons on the outside. I think they have to add a receiver. I feel like that's what they've been missing is an alpha wide receiver. They thought they had it in Keenan Coleman, and they obviously don't believe that, or at least the owner doesn't. So I have Cook sliding down a little bit. I think his work volume will still be there, but I do think that some of his pass catching is going to go out the window or go down a little bit, not completely out the window. I think that they have to add some type of alpha wide receiver, which then could, take away some of his work and everything else. So I have James Cook just sliding down to 9. That's about it, just because I feel like they're going to have to add something to that offense on the outside.
Okay. All right.
My number 10 this is a little homer pick, and I promise you about 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have had him up here because I thought he was out the door. Even as good as he looked. I put Kenneth Walker up here at number 10, and missing Charbonnet for half the year. I assume that Seattle is going to make it a priority now to re-sign him. I know they still have Kenny McIntosh on the roster, and then Cam Akers. McIntosh is on the IR, so they have Cam Akers. They have Houdani, and they actually have a local kid from Decatur, St. Teresa on their practice squad, and Jarkarian Wright, I think is what his name was. So it'd be, kind of cool to see him get some snaps next year. But I think they make it a priority to keep Kenneth Walker. He's looked phenomenal in these playoffs. He's looked phenomenal at times. And honestly, he was getting vultured at the red zone by Charbonnet for touchdowns, or you would have been talking about this guy as probably a top 5 back this year because he finished what, number 14 or 15 on the season. So if he wouldn't have got vultured for all those touchdowns, you could be talking about this guy as a top 5 back. And I do think he stays in Seattle now, and I do think it's a priority, and I think he finishes his top 10 because he's going to have half the season as being the workhorse.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you have this and not get on you too hard just because your team's playing for a Super Bowl. Mine just announced a new head coach, so we're clearly in two different spots. But I do think Mike McDonald's made it very clear that his team's going to have fresh legs in the backfield at all times. I think there will be somebody for competition. I watched you struggle with the headache of owning Seattle running backs this year. Unless I know for a fact Kenneth Walker's getting 80% of snaps next year, he won't be anywhere near my top 10. I just cannot get on board with that. If we were talking about a playoff run, who do I want? Absolutely, give me Kenneth Walker. But just because that's the philosophy that Clint Kubiak seems to want, who may or may not still be your offensive coordinator next year, it seems like fresh legs are a thing that they kind of want. And honestly, down the stretch until he got hurt, we started seeing more and more Charbonnet. Even when it was like the opposite, Kenneth Walker was looking better, we saw more Charbonnet. It was kind of a weird situation, but it's very clear they want to have two sets of legs healthy in that backfield running the ball. I'm just not there. If something happens to maybe change my mind, if it's Kenneth Walker and they address the position not a single other way all offseason, maybe at that point I get him up there. But for me right now, Brand, I just can't do it. I just don't trust it. I watched you want to beat your head off of a wall all year long. And it was either you don't play either one of them or you play the wrong one. That was kind of the way it seemed to have gone last year.
It's the championship. Started Walker and Charbonnet had a blast.
Yeah, so there you go. At my 10 spot, I did put Omari and Hampton in there. I just think this is very circumstantial. But there was two all-pro caliber offensive linemen missing for the Chargers all year last year. Those guys will be back. And now Mike McDaniel is in town, so that offense should look a little different next year as well. I think the stock is up very high for all things Charger right now. And I think when you see what those backs were able to do, whether it was Kamani Vidal, Hampton, there's always been fantasy relevancy coming out of that position. I think Omari and Hampton locks that backfield down next year. I think Omari and Hampton starts to submit his name, as that 1B to Ashton Genty's 1A from last year's class. I think you see big things continue out of Hampton again this year.
Yeah, I have Hampton right outside my top 10. I think that he easily can move up, easily move up my rankings, as you alluded to. A lot of that beef on the offensive line was missing. So Hampton's a guy that I could easily see sneaking into my top 10. Prior to the season, I have a few more names that I also have on there that we could easily be seeing sneaking in and everything else too. He's just a guy I left off just because I wasn't sure of where it was going to go, the direction of everything.
Okay. All right. Speaking of direction and everything, Brant, obviously there's going to be a rookie running back that a lot of people are going to be churning and chomping at the bit to get into their top 10. Obviously, we don't have him in there right now because when you talk about hypotheticals, it's the most hypothetical as things can get. Where do you think, or what would have to happen as far as the NFL draft for Jeremiah Love to be in your top 10 to start the season in your mind?
Kansas City Chiefs is one of the spots that I absolutely would be drooling over him going there. If Dallas doesn't keep Williams on the roster, then adding Love there would be phenomenal. I would say the Jets, but they just had Breece Hall and couldn't really do a whole lot with him. And then they have Braylon Allen and Isaac Davis back there who did okay down the stretch. So I don't see them trying to add Love. Really, those are the two main spots of it. I'm sure there's teams I'm missing. Tennessee would be a good spot as well, but I think they have too many positional needs. Not in the backfield right now. They could probably pay a very low contract to Pollard or Spears and keep them around while they try to rebuild it. But yeah, I think Kansas City, and if Dallas doesn't bring Williams back, those are the two that I would be all over.
So I guess the question bears asking, if Jeremiah Love comes in, goes through the draft and comes out as on paper a team's clear RB1, doesn't look like there's going to be obviously he doesn't get drafted in a situation where he's sitting behind somebody in our top 10. If he goes to one of those spots, like maybe he ends up in Minnesota, maybe Aaron Jones is out the door, he ends up in Minnesota, some place where he's going to have a clear line of work, does he instantly come into your top 10? Are you that impressed with him as what he did in college?
I am, but then you saw in college they had to his senior year. They took this past year. I think he was only a junior. I think he's declaring early. They had to take some of the work off of him this year with some other backs. So maybe he's not fully capable of taking a 250, 300 touch year there in the NFL. I do think he is explosive. I think he's a very good running back. I've watched a lot of Notre Dame games because, well, they're broadcasted on NBC here every single week. So if there's not another good game on, I've been watching them. I used to be a big Notre Dame fan, but I don't like all the politics and everything else that come with that. But we don't need to talk about that. But yeah, I do think that Love is a very good back, but he'd have to fall into a clear spot that I would have to see him getting 250, 300 touches, probably to put him in my top 10.
Okay. So this year he's going to be the clear number one. What happens if he was in last year's class? If he was in there with Ginty and Hampton, do you get it? Could he have been in front of those guys in your mind or no?
I don't think he goes in front of Ginty. I think Ginty did enough at college. I think Ginty was the clear-cut number one. I do think that you could have made the argument for him over Hampton just because he is a better pass catcher in my mind than Hampton is. But yeah, I don't think I'd put him over Hampton. Or I don't think I'd put him over Ginty. I'd probably put him right there with Hampton. It'd be like 2A, 2B in my mind.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with Jeremiah Love. If he goes to a situation, whether it be, Kansas City, I think is probably the dream scenario, although how dreamy is that to start the season with no Mahomes, probably. But I do think that's probably the dream scenario, with Dallas being the clear number two, and then some positions will open up around there. I'm sure, like I said, Minnesota could be appealing if they decide to move on from Aaron Jones. There's a couple other spots, but yeah, I think if he goes to a spot where he's the clear one and there's not a lot of competition, I could see myself moving him into these top 10. And it'd be really interesting, Brant, to see how much different our top 10s are from today, January 28th, where we haven't even played the Super Bowl, to, let's say, June 1st to September 1st next year. It'll be very interesting to see how those differ.
Yeah, definitely will. Ginty, another nice spot with the whole question mark of the backfield could be the Houston Texans. I know Woody Marks looked good. Nick Chubb's getting up there in age. Mixon may or may not have a foot, because that's about the extent of the updates that we've gotten from him. So the Houston Texans could be an interesting spot for Love as well.
Absolutely.
And I do think that puts some murky waters, but I don't think there's a single back in that on that team that could compete with him as the RB1 there.
I feel like, obviously for naming purposes, like him ending up in Green Bay somehow would be hilarious, just because of the double Love in the backfield, or, somebody more creative than me, 2 shots at Love, something, the fantasy team names that would come out of that roster, and the fun you'd be able to have with that. But yeah, I do think Jeremiah Love for the fantasy community is going to be the number one eyes on running back because again, there's wide receivers seem to be a dime a dozen. Running backs seem to be a little bit harder to find long-term value. So I think people will definitely be very, very tuned in on where Jeremiah Love goes. So it'll be interesting to see, as we get to April, what happens there.
Yeah, and I think that this is a type of guy that Kansas City, like you said, where he might be missing a quarterback, that they could work him in nicely without the quarterback there. I think he's the number one consensus player in this rookie draft right now that people are looking at. If you were to draft your rookies way too early, then I think that he should be probably the 101, not in a super flex, maybe even a super flex, because I'm not very appealed with these quarterbacks this year too. Now, you do got some receivers and everything, but I do think it's pretty cut and dry that Love is the number one guy right now.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some wide receivers that could be in the conversation, but we'll give you a pass for you not being super in depth into that right now, as your team is one of 2 still playing in the National Football League. But come a couple months from now, we're going to expect you to get your knowledge up on this wide receiver class, because there is some names on there that I think could be very intriguing as we move through the process. But yeah, Jeremiah Love's the one people are going to be looking into, and it'll be interesting to see if he can get into our top 10s, Brant.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that does it. Next week, I think we're going to come back at with you with one of our favorite things to do. We're going to do some Super Bowl props. We're going to do some Super Bowl food. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl, which means I get to be loud and proud and excited. It will be right around the corner for me, so I will be super excited, because this 2-week wait, I haven't had to do it in many, many years, and I'm just like, oh my God, there's 2 weeks between the last football game.
You and the Patriots fans have had to wait a long time since you guys have done this.
Yeah, we did, and now I get to listen to our coaches on Facebook, as I call them, the fans, as they're like, let's sign Lockett and everybody else to a one-day contract. And I don't know. I'm ready for the Super Bowl to be played. I've been ready every single week for the game to be played because a lot of talk have come in. This kind of is a dream book for Seattle. I'm going to get on my horn a little bit. We knocked out our 2 division rivals, and we get a chance at revenge against New England. I know Tom Brady's not there, and it's not the same team, but it's still a chance at revenge from our last Super Bowl appearance.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.